Okay, so Charles Spencer just said 4 words. 4 words, and those 4 words have completely destroyed Harry and Meghan's biggest plan yet. Like, honestly, when you find out what they were actually asking for, and what Charles Spencer said back, you are not going to believe it. Stay with me.
Some voices are born to rule. Power is not given. This is the royal voice, where the crown speaks.
Welcome to the Royal Voice, where we go beyond the headlines and tell you what is really happening behind those palace walls. So let us get into it. So here is the thing. Harry and Meghan went to Charles Spencer with a Netflix pitch. A big one. Like a really big one. And Charles Spencer, Diana's own brother, the man who has been guarding her private archive for nearly 30 years, looked at what they were asking for and reportedly said, "Is this a joke? Is this a joke?" And okay, so before you decide whether that reaction was too harsh or completely justified, you need to understand exactly what they were asking for. Because this was not a simple request. This was not a phone call saying, "Hey, can we use a few old photos?" This was a full formal Netflix pitch for a massive 30th anniversary Diana documentary slated for 2027. And pay attention here because this is where it gets wild. They did not just want Harry on camera talking about his mum, they wanted the vault, like the actual vault. They wanted access to Althorp, the Spencer family estate where Diana grew up, where she is buried on a private island in the middle of a lake. They wanted to film there. They wanted the grounds. They wanted the island. But wait, it gets worse. They also wanted Diana's personal handwritten diaries, pages she wrote for herself in private when no one was watching, words she never intended for any audience. The real unguarded Diana that the world has never seen. And on top of that, they wanted the private home movies, footage that only the Spencer family has ever had access to, footage that not a single frame of has ever leaked in 30 years. So here is the thing you have to understand. Without all of that, the diaries, the home movies, Althorp, this documentary is just another recycled history piece. The same old footage every network has been using since 1997. But with all of that, it becomes the definitive Diana film. The one that breaks every streaming record, the one the whole world watches, and Harry and Meghan's team knew that. They knew the vault was the product. Okay, so now here is the part that reportedly made Charles Spencer absolutely lose it. It was not just what they were asking for, it was the narrative angle they wanted to build around it, because pay attention here because this matters. The pitch proposed drawing a straight line between Diana's war with the royal establishment and Meghan's war with the same forces, like a direct, explicit connection, positioning Meghan as the modern Diana, the 21st century version of the woman who refused to be silenced. Diana's legacy, formally handed to Meghan, that was the pitch. And like honestly, when you think about what Charles Spencer has been watching for years, his reaction makes complete sense. He watched Diana's jewelry appear on Meghan at perfectly photographed moments. The butterfly earrings, the Cartier watch, the gold bracelets, every single time at a moment where the cameras were guaranteed to be there, right? And then he watched the Oprah interview in 2021. And he recognized the architecture immediately, the hushed lighting, the sympathetic interviewer, the sense of painful secrets coming out into the open, because he had seen that exact same setup before, in his sister's own Panorama interview in 1995. Like beat for beat, it was the same template. And then the Netflix documentary series, where Harry and Meghan explicitly framed themselves as being hunted by the same machine that destroyed Diana. So every single time a piece of Diana's image was borrowed and applied to someone else's story, each time the borrowing got bigger, and now they wanted the vault itself, the diaries, the home movies, Althorp as a film set, Diana's halo fitted to a new head permanently. They started by borrowing her jewelry. They ended by asking for her soul. And Charles Spencer said, "Is this a joke?" Honestly, the only surprise is that he kept it to 4 words. Okay, so now here's the part of this story that most people do not know, and this is the key that unlocks everything about why Charles Spencer has been saying no to everyone for 30 years. So you have to go back to something that happened in 1995, because this is important. By all accounts, it was Charles Spencer himself who first introduced his sister to Martin Bashir, the journalist behind the Panorama interview. The same interview the world now knows was obtained through forged documents and pure psychological manipulation, fake bank statements, fabricated evidence of surveillance, manufactured proof that everyone around Diana was betraying her. All of it designed to make a frightened, isolated woman believe her only safe move was to sit in front of a camera and bleed for the nation. And Diana's own brother held the door open, without knowing what he was doing, without knowing what Bashir actually was. So here's the thing. When the full truth about that interview came out years later, it hit Charles Spencer like a landslide because it meant that he had unknowingly played a part in one of the most devastating things that ever happened to his sister. Think about what that does to a person. You spend your whole life believing you are her protector. You stood in Westminster Abbey in front of 2 billion people and promised you would shield her sons from the machine that hurt her, and then you find out that the single worst media event of her final years walked through a door that you opened. Like, honestly, how do you live with that? And the answer is, you lock the vault and you never open it for anyone. That is what Charles Spencer has been doing. Every refusal for 30 years is an act of atonement. The sealed diaries, the home movies no one has seen, the decision to bury Diana at Althorp rather than hand her resting place to the institution. He has been doing penance, making absolutely certain that nothing like Panorama ever happens to Diana again, even in death. And in doing that, he has protected something extraordinary. There is a private Diana the world has never consumed. A real, unguarded, fully human version of her that exists only because one man has been saying no for 3 decades. That is what Harry and Meghan's pitch was asking him to give up. Okay, so now here is what you also need to understand about the timing of all of this, because this pitch was not a passion project, right? This was a rescue flare, and here is why. Harry and Meghan's $100 million Netflix deal was reportedly hanging by a thread going into 2026. The project meant to save it was the lifestyle series with Love Meghan. And okay, so the reviews came in and they were brutal. Like across the board brutal. The Times gave it 2 stars, the Telegraph gave it 2 stars and called it narcissistic. And then there was The Guardian, a paper that had defended Meghan repeatedly for years, a paper that has never been kind to the monarchy. The Guardian gave it 1 star. 1 star. Their critics suggested it might be the last thing Meghan ever makes for Netflix. And here is the thing that tells you everything about what was actually going on. Harry and Meghan's very first Netflix documentary, the one about leaving the royal family, was one of the most watched debuts in Netflix history. Every project since has performed worse than the one before. Heart of Invictus, Polo, with Love Meghan, each one cooler than the last. So here is what the audience was screaming at them and they were not listening. The world does not care about Meghan's lifestyle brand. The world cares about royal wounds. The only Sussex content that has ever sold is proximity to the crown and proximity to Diana. And so when the lifestyle brand collapsed, they reached for the deepest royal wound there is. Diana, the vault, the archive, the one card in the deck guaranteed to break records. And the man at Althorp tore it up in 4 words. But okay, so here is the layer of this story that almost nobody is talking about. And this is where it gets really interesting. Charles Spencer did not make this decision in a vacuum, right? Because sources close to the palace have been quietly describing something that most royal watchers have completely missed. The alignment between Diana's brother and Diana's eldest son. So here's the thing about William. He has been privately furious for years about what has been happening to his mother's image, like genuinely furious. But William cannot say anything publicly. He is the future king. Every move he makes creates headlines. If he publicly blocks his own brother's projects, it becomes a story about palace censorship and family war. The establishment looks like it is protecting itself. He cannot win. But Charles Spencer, he is not the establishment. He is Diana's brother. He has blood ties to both princes. He has 30 years of moral authority over her memory. And he holds absolutely no official position that anyone can attack. So when Charles Spencer calls the pitch a joke, nobody can spin it as the palace silencing Harry. There is no institution to blame. There is only one brother telling another brother what he thinks of what is being done with their sister, and that is a story nobody can control. Like, honestly, William never had to lift a finger, and that is not a coincidence. That is alignment. 2 people protecting the same memory from completely different directions. And then Charles Spencer went even further. He reportedly wrote a letter directly to Prince William. And okay, so before you think this was some emotional peace offering, it was not. By all accounts, this letter was about strategy, about the fact that by staying completely silent and treating Harry with total indifference, the royal family was handing the Sussexes an open microphone, letting them control the global narrative unchallenged while the monarchy just sat there. So here is the thing that makes your head spin a little. Diana's brother, the man who stood at her funeral and challenged the Windsor family to their faces in front of the entire world, is now writing to the future king telling him how to protect the crown's image. Like, if you wanted one single moment that shows you how completely Harry and Meghan have rearranged every loyalty in this story, that is it right there. And meanwhile, the rift itself has not moved, not an inch. The royal family is reportedly open to some kind of conversation with Harry, but with Meghan, no. And the reason is so simple and so devastating. Trust, there is none. The fear is not her anger. The fear is her content calendar. The The fear that every private conversation, every honest family moment, every quiet dinner becomes raw material for the next streaming project 18 months later. Every real moment becomes a potential episode. And so Harry may eventually find himself traveling to the UK alone, without Meghan, without the children, if he wants any relationship at all with what remains of his family. King Charles has maintained silence across thousands of miles. William and Catherine have not spoken to the Sussexes in years. That is what this whole saga has produced, not a documentary, not a streaming deal. Two brothers who cannot find their way back to each other, and a gate at Althorp that stays locked. So here is what I want you to take away from all of this. What Charles Spencer has been doing for 28 years, quietly, with no press releases, with no applause, with barely anyone paying attention, is protecting something that cannot be replaced once it is gone. The mystery of Diana, the private version of her, the diaries written in her own hand, the home movies shot when she was not performing for anyone, the real woman behind the icon. He kept that safe through every documentary commission, every anniversary retrospective, every streaming platform that showed up with a checkbook. He kept it safe when the money would have been enormous and the attention would have been irresistible. And when his own nephew's production company arrived with the biggest offer yet, dressed up as a tribute, as a son honoring his mother, he looked at the narrative underneath it and he said 4 words. Because here is the thing. Diana was exploited once by a man with forged documents and a camera and a story about how everyone around her was an enemy. Charles Spencer held that door open without knowing what he was doing. He has spent every year since making sure he never holds any door open again. Not for money, not for legacy, not for a 30th anniversary and a Netflix algorithm. The vault at Althorp stays shut. And in a world that turns grief into content and tragedy into streaming product, that locked gate is the most powerful thing anyone connected to Diana has done in 30 years. Not a documentary, not an interview, not a press release, just a man who refuses, and 4 words that said everything that needed to be said. That is all for today here at The Royal Voice. If this is your first time with us, make sure you subscribe, because we are always going to tell you what is really happening behind those palace walls. And I will see you in the next one.